Hi, I'm Ryan Graham. Welcome to Northwest Newsweek. Ontario ministers and area chiefs recently gathered in Toronto for a new transmission line announcement. It's the latest project to be designated as a priority Ring of Fire development. The new Nipigon to Greenstone line will boost electrical capacity along the route and will eventually help mining and related industries access the minerals in the Ring of Fire. Joey Langdon has a story.
Government officials and First Nations leaders gathered in Toronto to announce the long-awaited Greenstone transmission line is being designated a priority Ring of Fire project and will therefore be under the One Project, One Process framework and have an accelerated start date.
As you know, with headwinds of uncertainty and really the upending of global alliances, our country's future hinges on the boldness of our actions today.
It's about forward thinking and building the kind of transmission line that will do one of the most important things in the history of Ontario. Finally electrify just about every community in Ontario.
First Nations leaders present included members of AZA, BZA, Bingwe Nayashi, Red Rock, and Arrowland First Nations. The planned transmission line going across all of their territories, the First Nations will have the opportunity to invest in a 50% equity stake in the transmission line through Hydro One's 50-50 partnership model. The new line will also help the new Equinox gold mine in Greenstone, boosting the energy grid with enough capacity for the operation to keep growing.
I get a little emotional when I talk about small town that at one time was two of the largest, richest gold mine in Ontario. And to see where it is now, it's very touching.
My community is in the early stages of development as we build homes and plan for a long-term growth. Improving reliability will help ensure our community members are less impacted by the power outages that often occur during the winter months.
None of this would be possible without meaningful partnership with First Nations. And we know the North represents one of the best counters, be it in the Ring of Fire or across the entire north of Ontario, when it comes to countering the rise of economic uncertainty.
The 220-kilometer-long Greenstone transmission line is expected to be built somewhere alongside the existing transmission hydro line between Nipigon and Long Lac and extending to Arrowland First Nation. The government did not provide an estimated price tag, but did say the new line is expected to be in service by 2032. Joey Langdon, TBT News.
Sioux Lookout is getting a huge infrastructure investment from the province. The town will use the $16.6 million to fund the expansion of its wastewater treatment plant. Sioux Lookout's sewage system is getting close to capacity, which could have forced the municipality to throw the brakes on any growth in the town. The money comes from the Municipal Housing Infrastructure Program for Water Safety and Health. The municipal portion for the $22.7 million expansion project is $6.1 million. Sioux Lookout Mayor Doug Lawrence says it's the biggest investment in the town that he can remember from any provincial government. And going forward, Sioux Lookout residents can have peace of mind in their infrastructure.
Reliability, you can do all those things in the morning and the evening without thinking twice about it. We're going to have reliable water and wastewater treatment. I mean, as a civil engineer, I think I'd like people to think about these things more, but they don't need to. It's being taken care of, and we're very grateful to the provincial government for doing this.
No construction timetable has been finalized yet, as some of the regulatory hurdles still need to be cleared for the project to move forward. Premier Doug Ford says his government's investment in the Ring of Fire will transform Northern Ontario communities. That was one of many issues Ford touched on during a recent speech to municipal leaders at the annual Rural Ontario Municipal Association Conference in Toronto.
We're creating new opportunities for Ontario workers by getting shovels in the ground on the roads to the Ring of Fire this summer. Just think of that. This summer, I already saw pictures of the big excavators coming up north, and they're going to stay there, and they're going to continue building the roads. The vast reserve of critical minerals, and this is a very, very conservative estimate, will add $22 billion to our economy and more than 70,000 jobs in industries across Ontario. It will transform northern and rural communities, as well as our great First Nations, with new jobs, economic opportunity, and investment, protecting our province from tariffs and economic uncertainty.
Ford says the critical minerals in the Ring of Fire can be shipped around the world and help insulate the Canadian economy from trade uncertainty with the U.S. The Premier also trumpeted his government's 10-year, $30 billion plan to repair critical infrastructure, such as Northern Ontario highways.
It's been very disturbing to hear all the accidents up north. I get the calls right to my cell phone, and we're doing everything we can to twin roads, to put 2-in-1 roads, to make it safer, making sure that the roads get plowed and salted as quickly as possible, because there's been tragedies over the holidays and no one wants that. So we're going to continue investing in rural roads and highways, investing like the North has never seen before.
A large pillar of the Ford government's 2025 platform was starting work on the Ring of Fire while connecting nearby First Nations to Ontario's road network. Minister Greg Rickford says 2026 will be the year that real progress is shown. The MPP for Kenora-Rainy River has a portfolio that includes economic and community partnerships for the Ring of Fire area. The provincial government has coined the term Corridor of Prosperity to refer to these communities alongside the coveted mining area. Rickford says by the end of this year, there will be a noticeable change in the map.
Well, it's been a busy year this year. I think we're in a position now to safely say that all 3 to 4 major access points to the corridor and from the corridor to prosperity will be under construction. So Webequay, Martin Falls, and of course Greenstone, which serves as the baseline in the First Nations communities most proximal to them. We expect that the corridor to prosperity in all aspects will be considerably under construction.
The government previously announced that the first steps would be to upgrade Highway 584 through Geraldton and up to Nakina. Work on that part of the route is already underway. Ignace's mayor says she felt blindsided when she was told that the sawmill in her community is being shut down indefinitely. Domtar announced the closure earlier this month, striking another major blow to northwestern Ontario's forestry industry. Joey Langdon reports.
March 12th will be the final day of operation for the Ignace sawmill before it's shut down indefinitely. Domtar Corporation confirmed its decision on January 13th. They say it's a temporary curtailing of its lumber production due to a weak softwood market. Ignace Mayor Kim Bagri says she was blindsided by the news.
I got a phone call on my cell phone. I didn't know who it was. I answered it, and it was Terry, I believe, from Domtar, and I was shocked. I was upset. I didn't want to hear that for our community, but I told him I understand, the tariff and the softwood prices, and I realized you can't operate when you're losing. I understand where they're coming from, but we want to support our community and the workers.
The closure affects 25 workers. The mayor wants to stress, however, that it is not all doom and gloom in the township. She cites opportunities in construction and from the proposed nuclear waste repository that she believes will help cushion the blow.
There's some good news stories coming out of Ignace, and one is the subdivision. So, you know what, we're going to, I'm sure that Bruno Contracting is going to need workers for that. There's actually the Center of Expertise announcement as well. Hopefully shovels in the ground by the fall. So we just want them to know that we are there and we support them.
The shutdown is just the latest mill closure in Northern Ontario. Mills in Terrace Bay and Ear Falls have closed in the last 2 years. The mill in Kapuskasing was also recently slated to close until securing significant funding from Ottawa and the province. Joey Langdon, TBT News.
After the break, we head back to Ignace for a potential look to the future for the municipality. Welcome back. The nuclear waste repository near Ignace is moving closer to reality. There has been vocal opposition from some in the region, and now, as part of the typical regulatory process, the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada is asking the public what questions they'd like answered before the project gets final approval. Once again, here is Joey Langdon, who was in Ignace for a recent public information session.
Residents of Ignace and the surrounding area were invited to a series of information sessions this week on the planned Deep Geological Repository project that would see Canada's nuclear waste buried deep in the earth at a facility near the township. The session was hosted by the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada and the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. The two federal agencies will conduct an impact assessment, gathering resident concerns and forwarding them to the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. And despite some very vocal opposition, Town Clerk Leslie Sterling knows there's been plenty of support from Ignace residents.
Obviously, we've had overwhelming support for the project. When we did the vote a couple of years ago, it was 77% in favor, but there are still people who are unsure or need more information. So this is a chance for them to read the details and ask their questions and voice their concerns.
So we want people to feel like they're involved in the process from the beginning right up to the end. So we're trying to make sure that right now there's not as much information that's known, but it's the time when we can think about what information we want to know.
There was little opposition during this public information session, but the Nuclear Waste Management Organization will have to satisfy the concerns that do come in during the assessment period before the project can go ahead. Much of that has centered around the transportation of the material, something that the NWMO didn't include in their initial project description.
Where we would be asking for specific studies about specific things. And when we make the decision on scoping, we take into consideration a lot of different things. We consider if there's other regulatory mechanisms in Canada to look at those aspects. We look at comments that we receive from federal experts, as well as comments from the public and Indigenous groups. So it's a very robust decision making.
Nuclear waste is and will be a hot button issue in the region, but people here are hoping that the discussion around it after these sessions will be a little less toxic. Joey Langdon, TBT News.
The coroner's inquest into the death of Kevin Mamakwa has been postponed due to a death in the family. Proceedings were scheduled to begin last Monday here in Thunder Bay, but will now be postponed to late in the spring. Mamakwa, a 27-year-old member of Kingfisher Lake First Nation, died in 2020 while in custody at the Thunder Bay District Jail. Mamakwa's life partner passed away last weekend, so the presiding coroner has opted to postpone the proceedings out of respect for the family. The lawyer for the coroner's office, Kate Forzette, says they were prepared to begin the inquest today, but will ensure that all the unanswered questions will be addressed as soon as possible.
We've had to adjourn the inquest to allow the family to properly grieve and be together during this difficult time. And we want to offer our condolences to everyone impacted by this death, as well as Kevin's. It's been a long time. Kevin passed away in June of 2020, and we know how important it is for the family. And so our intention is to honor that and make sure that the community's voices are heard, the family is heard, and that we learn the circumstances of Kevin's death to hopefully prevent this from happening to anyone else's family in the future.
The 10-day inquest is now tentatively scheduled to begin during the first week of June. Northern leaders lobbied for safer Northern Ontario roadways during the province's pre-budget consultations in Thunder Bay this week. The Ford government's 2026 budget is expected to be released by early March. But first, the Standing Committee on Finance and Economic Affairs is meeting with public stakeholders across Ontario. Joey Langdon reports.
The Nor'Wester Hotel was the local site for a day-long pre-budget consultation session featuring presenters from Thunder Bay and the broader region. Hornpain Mayor Cheryl Fort is also president of the Ontario Good Roads Association, which continues to demand safer roadways.
If the ambulance is going throughout the community through these roads and the signage isn't proper, or there's not a rumble strip, or we've seen accidents in the past where weather can play a part. So if we have the safety measures in to be proactive to try and stop what could be a collision.
PC member Ernie Hardiman is the chair of the Standing Committee on Finance and Economic Affairs, which includes MPPs from all parties at Queen's Park. He says they need to know what people in the north need most.
You hear from people around southwestern Ontario on a regular basis, but it's very important to, when you're preparing the financial statement or the financial direction for the next year, it's very important to hear from people all over, including going up in northern Ontario.
The committee featured PC members from southern Ontario communities such as Windsor, Woodstock, Wasaga Beach, Peterborough, and Ottawa, and Thunder Bay Aticoken's Kevin Holland was in the morning session. The NDP had Sol Mamakwa and Lise Bourgeois from the region, while the Liberals had a member from Etobicoke Lakeshore in Toronto. Some of the local presenters say they appreciated the chance to address the MPPs here in person to tell them which areas need more provincial funding.
I've never had the opportunity to speak to so many politicians all at once, and I'm glad to be here today because the message is very important. Injured workers are slipping through the cracks, and people are turning a blind eye. There's so much stigma with injured workers where employers, they don't want to pay.
Family health teams across the Northwest need more funding. We need funding that has been designated for us over the next couple of years to be released now. So we're very grateful we got to speak to people here today in Thunder Bay.
The problems in Northern Ontario some of them are more are bigger problems in Northern Ontario than they are in Southern Ontario, but that's why we need to hear from different places, and then the direction I think we're going is what the province of Ontario wants.
The in-person pre-budget consultations have now wrapped up, with the final stop in Sudbury. Hardeman says he expects the Ford government will present its 2026 budget at the end of February or in early March. Joey Langdon, TBT News.
The MPP for Kenora Rainy River was in his riding recently to make an announcement in Dryden. More on this after the break.
A lot of seniors, according to the geographics, that will be returning to Dryden within the next few years.
Welcome back. The Dryden Go-Getters Center will soon put the finishing touches on the latest addition to the popular facility, thanks to funding from the province. MPP Greg Rickford recently visited the Seniors Activity Center to make the announcement. Officials with the Go-Getters Center are renovating the basement level and turning it into a games room with a pool table and space for additional programming for their seniors, such as seated volleyball, cribbage, and floor shuffleboard. Rickford says this was a perfect project for his government as senior care is one of their top priorities. Go-Getters President Judy Krager says their numbers continue to grow.
We've gone from 323 members when COVID was over, and that was probably 23 or something, 2023, and we now are getting pretty close to 700. There's a lot of seniors, according to the demographics, that will be returning to Dryden within the next few years. It could possibly double.
The assets, services, and programmings to keep our seniors connected, have a vibrant social life with programming that fits other aspects of their lives is, I think, some of the most important work a politician can do.
According to Stats Canada, 19% of Ontario residents are 65 or older, compared to only 16% a decade ago. And the senior population could be growing even faster here in the Northwest. The federal government's Critical Minerals Infrastructure Fund is helping 6 area First Nations get involved in new energy projects near their communities. MP Patty Haidu says $50,000 grant should lead to further collaboration among the communities. Joey Langdon has more.
With the potential for new mines popping up around the region, there's also a need for new transmission lines. MP Patty Haidu was in her hometown to announce $850,000 from Ottawa for Indigenous communities to participate in economic projects across the country. $300,000 of that is coming to 6 First Nations in the Lake Nipigon-Greenstone area to conduct engagement studies for proposed energy projects in or near their communities. One of the recipients is Bingwi Nyashi for the planned new hydro line from Nipigon to Greenstone. Chief Paul Gladue says collaboration between the First Nations is going to be important.
It gives me great pleasure to be able to, where we're situated between Source Lake Nipigon, between Nipigon and Greenstone and basically, all the projects are running through, and we have over 150 projects, and we're crazy busy, and opportunities, and a lot of opportunities with solar, wind, and we're needing this line coming through, and having working with Treaty 9 chiefs.
This isn't conditional funding, to be clear, and I just want to be really clear about that. This is not about getting to a yes and ensuring getting to a yes. What I said is it can be easier to get to a yes if people can participate. But communities have to feel like this is the right thing for them. And in order to feel like the project is proceeding in a way that they can wrap their heads around it, they have to have the tools to be able to do that.
Haidu mentioned that a previous hurdle to getting projects approved was that the First Nations consulted did not feel they had resources to properly respond to proposals. And she hopes that providing these communities with funding to get those resources is an important step towards reconciliation, while still allowing for progress and development in northwestern Ontario.
I think for me, the goal, and I would say for the Government of Canada, is that we build a better relationship with Indigenous peoples, and that we, as a country, acknowledge that when we work together, we can actually do things better, faster, safer, and we can do things in respect of the land and the waters that we need to protect for the next 7 generations. This is a concept that, honestly, I would say that colonial countries around the world have really failed to grasp.
The government also announced funding to Indigenous-led projects in northeastern Ontario, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia under the same revenue stream. Joey Langdon, TBT News.
A singer-songwriter from the Northwest is once again headed to the Juno Awards. Asanabi is a member of Sandy Lake First Nation and grew up in Kaministiquia. He's up for 2 more Juno Awards this time around.
I see you begging, share from your burning.
The 33-year-old musician received his first Juno nomination in 2023, but didn't win. But the following year, he was up for 3 awards and took home 2 of them. One for Contemporary Indigenous Artist of the Year and the other for Alternative Album of the Year. His second full-length album, titled Edge of the Earth, was released last June, and now he's been nominated by the Canadian Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences in those same 2 categories. The 2026 Juno Awards will be handed out on March 28th in Hamilton. That's all the time we have now for Northwest Newsweek. I'm Ryan Graham. We'll see you next time.